Hello and welcome to the World News on VOPTV. My name is Esther Mwachuku. We'll begin with the United Nations, which has disclosed recently that $445 million is required to support about 860,000 refugees and returnees from Sudan. The updates followed a preliminary summary of the Interagency Regional Refugee Response Plan for Sudan presented to donors on Thursday. The UNHCR said the response plan will primarily cover immediate support in Chad, South Sudan, Egypt, Ethiopia, as well as South Sudan and Central African Republic. The UNHCR said of the projected 860,000, 580,000 will be Sudanese, 235,000 refugees previously hosted by Sudan returning home in adverse conditions, and 45,000 refugees of other nationalities previously hosted by Sudan. Egypt and Sudan are likely to see the most arrivals. The current fighting has already displaced over 330,000 people inside Sudan, with a further over 100,000 refugees and returnees leaving Sudan. The Refugee Agency on Thursday launched a data portal to update daily new numbers of refugee and returnee arrivals in neighboring countries. Now, since April 15, clashes between the Sudanese armed forces and rapid support forces has had devastating consequences for civilians who have been killed, injured, and forced to flee their homes as a result of the conflict. Meanwhile, protesters largely made up of former regime supporters held a protest in the Red Sea capital, calling for UN envoy Volker Perth to leave Sudan before storming his office. Perth has been operating from Port Sudan since the eruption of armed conflict in Khartoum between the Sudanese army and the Rapid Support Forces on April 15, 2023. The demonstration began at the Alumni Club and ended at the Coral Hotel, where the UN envoy's headquarters is located. Protesters chanted slogans against the UN's involvement in Sudanese affairs and demanded the envoy's departure. Eyewitnesses told Sudan Tribune that the majority of protesters were affiliated with the former regime, while others belonged to the tribal body of the Supreme Council of Beja chiefdoms and independent groups. Sources also reported the involvement of remnants of the former regime in the Red Sea state, who had previously organized several protests in Khartoum after the October 25, 2021 coup against the UN envoy. Now, Syed Abu Ammar, the spokesperson for the Beja tribal body, has refuted any connection between the council and the group that stormed the residence of the UN envoy in Port Sudan. He pointed out that their objection to Volker's presence in the region was due to his exclusion of the region's representative in the political process, which was limited to a few fictitious individuals and entities that do not represent the diverse people of Sudan. The UN envoy is part of a facilitation panel that includes the IGAD and the African Union. The role of the trilateral mechanism is limited to facilitating the political process, which is led and run by Sudanese parties. Mohamed Tariq, the head of the Beja Chiefdoms Council, is a member of the People of Sudan Initiative, a pro-Islamist coalition that held several demonstrations outside the UNITAM's headquarters in Khartoum. Tariq, who calls for the cancellation of the Juba Peace Agreement for Eastern Sudan, is also a member of the Democratic Bloc, which gathers two peace signatories from the Darfur region and the Democratic Unionist Party led by Ghaffar al-Meghani. Now, Serbian authorities have confirmed that a gunman apparently shooting at random killed 8 people and wounded 14 in 3 Serbian villages, shaking a nation still in the throes of grief over a mass shooting a day earlier. Police arrested a suspect on Friday after an all-night manhunt. Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić called Thursday's shooting an attack on the whole nation and said the persons arrested wore a T-shirt with a pro-Nazi slogan on it. Vučić vowed to the nation in an address that the suspect will never again see the light of day. He referred to the attack as an act of terror and announced a new raft of gun control measures, including a moratorium on new permits for firearms, as well as an increase in the number of police. The shooting came a day after a 13-year-old boy used his father's guns to kill 8 fellow students and a guard at a school in Belgrade, the capital. The bloodshed sent shockwaves through a Balkan nation scarred by wars, but unused to mass murders. Though Serbia is awash with weapons left over from the conflict of the 90s, Wednesday's shooting was the first of a school in the country's modern history. The last mass shooting before this week was in 2013 when a war veteran killed 13 people in a central Serbian village. Late Thursday, an attacker shot at people in 3 villages near Mladovac, some 30 miles south of the capital. President Vučić said the assailant targeted people wherever they were. Police said the suspect, identified by the initials UB, was arrested near the central Serbian town of Kragujevac, about 60 miles south of Belgrade. State-run RTS television said the suspect was in a relative's home when he was caught and had 4 hand grenades and a large cache of illegal weapons and ammunition, and that's according to the agency France Press. RTS said he was shooting from a moving vehicle. Authorities, however, released a photo of the suspect in a police car showing a young man in a blue T-shirt with a slogan, Generation 88, on it. The double 8s can be used as shorthand for Hail Hitler, since H is the 8th letter of the alphabet. Before the second shooting, Serbia spent much of Thursday reeling. Students, many wearing black and carrying flowers, filled streets around the school in central Belgrade as they paid silent homage to slain peers. Serbian teachers' unions announced protests and strikes to warn about a crisis in the school system and demand changes. Wednesday's shooting at the Vladislav Ribnikar school also left 6 children and a teacher hospitalized. One girl who was shot in the head remains in life-threatening condition, and a boy is in serious condition with spinal injuries. That is according to the doctors, which was disclosed on Thursday. Authorities have identified the shooter as Kosta Kekmanovic and said he was too young to be charged and tried. He has been placed in a mental hospital, and his father has been detained on suspicion of endangering public security. Now, gun ownership is common in Serbia and elsewhere in the Balkans. The country has one of the highest number of firearms per capita in the world, and guns are often fired into the air at celebrations in the region. Experts have repeatedly warned of the danger posed by the number of weapons in Serbia, a highly divided country where convicted war criminals are frequently glorified and violence against minority groups often goes unpunished. They also note that decades of instability stemming from the conflicts of the 1990s as well as ongoing economic hardship could trigger such outbursts. Now, in order for us to talk about this unfortunate incident, we have joining us virtually from the UK, a global affairs analyst in person of Paul Ejima. Paul, good afternoon and welcome to the World News on VOP TV.
Thank you for having me, Esther.
All right, Paul. We have seen exactly what is currently ongoing in Serbia. 2 or 3 days ago, we heard whereby a young boy was, created an opera whereby he shot a group of persons. People died, and while the country is still going through that, we also had another mass shooting. What exactly is going on whereby we're beginning to see mass shootings recently, especially in some of these countries outside the shores of Nigeria? For no reason, you hear that a young person, especially young people, very young people, enter a school, kill students, kill teachers, and there is no reason for such outbursts. It has become a frequent attitude right now with a lot of young persons. Critics have complained that it is what they're exposed to either on social media or that it is what they watch at home, and then we're trying to understand why gun control has become a situation so deliberate where you see persons having arms and ammunition, having the access to purchase, and we've been seeing a lot of innocent people die from these kind of atrocities by individuals. What's your take on that?
So, quite a mouthful, but let us begin by expressing our condolences to families who lost loved ones in this unfortunate incidents. I think you have captured it in both in your report and then this question that we are seeing, the negative effect of social media, gun culture, and pop culture also, what people are being exposed, children that could hardly inform their judgment. And so they watch, they have heroes, they watch. So that is the reason I think parents and the whole government look at what teenagers are exposed to. But at the same time, the question of Serbia, like you mentioned, coming out of the conflict, the 90s, that hasn't, it's known for instability and violence. And then the fact that there is economic hardship, so a combination of that, when people, is a case of bottled up anger and lack of control. It is, you have mentioned, one of the countries with the highest number of guns per capita. And what it means is that, in fact, they use gun shooting for celebration. And so I think you cannot, it's like playing with fire. Fire can do a lot of good things, but is also a dangerous customer. So I think this is a combination of social dysfunction and the fact that they call it freedom. Children are exposed to a lot of things that they consider, heroes or somebody. One of them was wearing the 88, you said, idolizing Hitler.
Yes.
And then some have violent themes that children are exposed to. These are some, and then the fact that at home, there is no longer, the value system has collapsed. Parents are no longer playing their role, and adults, even schools. At schools, they call it freedom, that people, even when you try to correct anybody, they say it's none of your business to do that. So I think society has to wake up. It's not just only in Serbia. You have seen in the United States, the fact, the only problem here now is that they shouldn't allow it to get to the level of a country like United States, because it will be dangerous. So the measure by the president of moratorium on new licenses could be a beginning, but there has to be a lot of public reorientation so that they don't move into a violent and gun culture situation that will be dangerous for the country, the region, and then the rest of the world.
Now, this is also a situation whereby a particular unknown gunman, who has actually been confirmed now, was shooting at random, and he killed eight people and wounded 14 in 3 Serbian villages. So this young man went around just shooting randomly for no reason. The police authorities are saying that it could be due to a mental dysfunction. But would we say this state of mental imbalance is an avenue through which a lot of persons with volatile intentions, or punitive intentions that are, of course, not of a good mind or good intent, use this whole mental dysfunction as a means to commit mayhem, whereby it feels that if a certain individual is termed to be mentally unstable, there's a certain way through which the crime committed by that person will be addressed? Do we think that there is a way through which individuals who are termed to carry out such nefarious acts with the term of mental instability would be properly dealt with, when it comes to the kind of consequential actions that they should undertake?
Health is a big problem everywhere, particularly in Western countries, in America, everywhere. That is because of the social pressure that people go through. Some cannot handle pressure very effectively. The body system, the body composition and constitution, some, just caving is, so it is a reality. But that should also be separated from the fact that whenever such a thing happens, the lawyers will come out and plead that their client has a mental problem. But that is for the courts to determine, because they will now need to, prove it in court. So you can see that there is a reality, there is a balance there with people that the fact that there is a mental health issue, and the other one that that cannot excuse anybody. If, of course, it can also give rise to this kind of violence because the psychopathic fellow or somebody that is not in his mind can do a lot of things. But that is not to justify the fact. Some also just are criminally minded. Some are push, it's a kind of pull and push forces, factors that are there. Lack of proper upbringing, or coming from, broken homes, or a society that does not care, and the fact that you have a liberal, gun law system. So these are a combination of things that both the government and then the private sector and the families again will need to support, because after all, whatever happens, every comes from a home, and then you don't get until the person comes out and begin to constitute a threat to the public before something is done. So if there is any question of mental illness, it has to be identified in time, diagnosed and identified, and then there are hospitals that can take care of them. So it shouldn't be an excuse, even though it is a real and problem, urgent in many societies. And that is because of the kind of pressure that modern life has brought on everybody, or what human beings have brought on themselves, because you do a lot of things. Some even outsource their own value system or upbringing to maybe schools. Schools are ill-equipped to do that. Families have to do their own. And at times, governments think that they can play the role of parenting. No, you cannot, by putting foster homes or whatever. These are no effective solutions. But I think as they go along, they need to find the effective remedy to this type of yeah.
So let's look at the role that the home plays in all this, where family comes into this. This particular suspect, who has been identified by the initials UB, was arrested near the central Serbian town of Kragujevac. And of course, he was caught in a relative's home with 4 hand grenades and a large cache of illegal weapons and ammunition. Now, he was in a relative's home, caught with all of this ammunition. Does that mean that this was planned and that the relatives knew about this? For him to have comfortably gone into his relative's home to hide before he was caught by the police or the officials there, the force or the officials who apprehended him. Does that tell us that some homes are in support of some of these attitudes that these children or some adults exhibit?
It will be difficult to say. I think we'll leave it for the investigation, which is ongoing, to unravel. But what is happening is that most children are left on their own. And then in some places, not much is the society where that is very individualistic. A child can be playing, maybe undergoing some crisis or challenges, but nobody has bothered to find out what it is. And then maybe this relative might be going about his or her, all of them going about their normal duties, go to work, come back very late. They will not even see themselves. These are societies where you live with your neighbors, you don't even know, you don't say, you don't greet, you don't know who your neighbors are, or nobody asks, unless where there is any crisis, then they call the police. They couldn't even come and find out from their neighbor. So that is the kind of, what do you call it? The kind of reckless system of life that people are living, where people in isolation, nobody, but when you interact, when you engage, some of these things can be taken care of. It doesn't have to be the parents alone, but parents have to do, the home has to play a major part in the upbringing of a child, of any normal human being, of a citizen. And then the latter will be, what company do you keep? Peer pressure, the people, because that can also constitute, before you now move to the wider society. But here, I think there is a failure by all concerned. And so we cannot blame the family. We don't know what has happened. Here, it shows that actually there was no supervision. They did not know how can the boy amass that kind of a weapon? What war is he fighting? But if he had been supervised early enough to notice this type of abnormal behavior of fines, they would have reported it to the authorities. So early detection will always a lot of things. So there is a combination.
We do know that Serbia is a country that has one of the highest number of firearms per capita in the world. That's one. And then it's a country where convicted war criminals are frequently glorified and violence against minority groups often go unpunished. Do you think the president has a stronghold in reducing the level at which people kind of possess firearms? Do you think there's any way he's going to have a foothold, in reducing that lifestyle in the country?
Yeah, leadership is key here, but he cannot do it alone. Remember that government, whether in running a parliamentary, or presidential, or whatever it is, it has three arms. There is the executive, there is the legislature, and then the judiciary. So all of them, he will laws. Parliament will have to assent to that law. Will agree, will pass that law, and then he gives his assent to it. Of course, he can introduce, that is the beauty, he can introduce bills or that can result in acts. And then again, you have to, what is the punishment? Because if there is no consequence for those who shoot and kill people, if there is impunity, there is no consequence for bad behavior. That can encourage others. There is no deterrent. So against such practices. So the president, yes, he can bring leadership and set the agenda about the way the country should go in terms of gun control. But he will need one, the executive, the parliamentary arm, and then that is the legislative arm, and then the judiciary to enforce those laws. And at the same time, society has to play a role. We have mentioned what families can do. Because it's not alone. Laws by themselves cannot change any society. There has to be that change, mindset change, behavioral change towards culture of knowing that everybody will live together and there will be no need to answer violence with violence, and people will have to report, because if they do not report the threats to life for certain suspects. If the boy was seen with this type of gun and nobody reported to the police until he has now made violent use of it, that is wrong. So there has to be that public education.
Thank you.
To make sure.
Thank you, Paul Ejima. Thank you so much for your contribution right here on VOP Television World News. I do appreciate your input.
My pleasure.
All right, moving on. Wagner Group founder Yevgeny Prigozhin has threatened to put out all of his mercenary forces from the devastated eastern Ukrainian city of Bakhmut. A dramatic escalation of his ongoing feud with the Russian Defense Ministry over supplies and support. In a video posted by his press service on May 5, Prigozhin accused Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu and the country's top general of incompetent leadership and pledged to pull out Wagner forces from Bakhmut by May 10, the day after the Kremlin's planned World War II Victory Day commemorations. Prigozhin said a lack of ammunition has led to enormous losses among his troops, and he lashed out at Shoigu, General Valery Gerasimov, chairman of Russia's General Staff, as well as President Vladimir Putin, accusing them of being incapable of leading what they are supposed to lead. Prigozhin's forces have been at the heart of a brutal 8-month effort to capture the city of Bakhmut, located in the eastern Donetsk region. Fighting alongside regular Russian forces, Wagner troops have deployed tens of thousands of prison convicts as part of their assault. It's unclear how many Wagner troops have been involved in the battle, but the city has been demolished in the process, with Russian forces making painstaking incremental gains at the cost of huge troop losses. Russia's overall casualty tally in Ukraine, killed and wounded, total at least 100,000. That includes 20,000 Russians killed in action, of which about half of that number were Wagner mercenaries. Prigozhin, along with other hardline nationalists, has engaged in an increasingly public and increasingly bitter fight with Shoigu, Gerasimov, and other Russian commanders, accusing them of botching the overall Russian effort to defeat Ukraine. The Wagner effort to take Bakhmut has also resulted in heavy Ukrainian casualties, and some Ukrainian soldiers have spoken out to question the decision to remain. Military experts have also questioned the strategic value of the city for Russia. In the video, Prigozhin said the threatened withdrawal would not happen until May 10 so as not to spoil Victory Day. After that, he said his troops will retreat from Bakhmut to lick their wounds and hand their positions over to Defense Ministry troops. The Kremlin denied, or rather declined, to comment on Prigozhin's remarks, as did the Defense Ministry. Also, in another video statement released the day before, Prigozhin was shown standing next to dozens of corpses, what he called freshly killed Wagner fighters. In an expletive-filled rant, he accused Shoigu and Gerasimov of complicity in their death because he said Wagner's forces weren't getting enough ammunition. It was not possible to independently verify Prigozhin's claims. He has previously made similar comments and threats, however, which he later did not follow through on. Prigozhin's comments also come as Ukraine is poised to launch what many predict will be a major counteroffensive against Russian positions. After a winter of failed Russian efforts to make major advances, new Ukrainian army recruits take part in a military exercise in the eastern Donetsk region. Meanwhile, Israel's counter-terror authorities say they seized around 190 crypto accounts at crypto exchange Binance since 2021, including 2 it said were linked to ISIS and dozens of others it said were owned by Palestinian firms connected to the Palestinian militant group Hamas. Israel's National Bureau for Counter-Terror Financing on January 12th confiscated 2 Binance accounts and their contents. One of the documents on the NBCTF's website showed the seizure was to thwart the activity of ISIS and impair its ability to further its goals. The NBCTF said on its website, the NBCTF document, which has not been previously reported, did not give any details on the value of the crypto seized, nor how the accounts were connected to ISIS. Binance, the world's largest crypto exchange by trading volumes, did not respond to Reuters' calls and emails seeking comment before this article was published on Thursday. Now, in a blog post after its publication, Binance accused global news agency Reuters of deliberately leaving out critical facts. Binance claimed it had been working closely with international counter-terrorism authorities on the seizures. And according to Reuters, Israel's Defense Ministry, which is responsible for the NBCTF, did not respond to requests for comments. Under Israeli law, the country's defense minister can order the seizure and confiscation of assets that the ministry deems related to terrorism. Regulators globally have long called for tighter controls on crypto exchanges to prevent illegal activities from money laundering to the financing of terrorism. The seizures by Israel's NBCTF highlight how governments are targeting crypto companies in their efforts to prevent illegal activity. Binance, founded in 2017 by CEO Changpeng Zhao, says on its website it reviews information requests from governments and law enforcement agencies on a case-by-case basis, disclosing information as legally required. Now, the chief legal officer of Coinbase on Friday took preemptive strike against U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission amid its legal fight for regulatory clarity over crypto. Paul Grewal cited a court's precedents confirming that the petition clause protects the rights of individuals and allows them to appeal to courts and forums for legal disputes. The move comes as a court on Wednesday agreed with Coinbase's petition and ordered the SEC to respond to Coinbase's complaint within 10 days. But Mr. Grewal stated on May 5 that petition clause protects the right of individuals to appeal to courts and other forums established by the government for resolution of legal disputes. He cited the court's precedents in Borough of Doyer v. 180 564 U.S. 379 subsection in 2011 case, urging U.S. SEC Chair Gary Gensler to comply and respond to the complaints. Coinbase filed a lawsuit against the US SEC after the regulator failed to provide clarity regarding guidelines and rules on crypto trading, listed and staking. Contrarily, the SEC continued enforcement actions against crypto exchanges and companies without disclosing clear rules related to crypto. In the lawsuit, Coinbase compels the SEC to reply to its petition submitted in 2022. Now, in the petition, the exchange asks 50 specific questions about the regulatory treatment of digital assets by the SEC, including how it applies securities laws to digital assets. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit ordered the SEC to respond to Coinbase's writ of mandamus within 10 days. Coinbase may file a reply to the Commission's response within 7 days of the filing. And that is a wrap on the world news right here on VOP TV. My name is Esther Mwachukwu. To subscribe to YouTube channel at Voice of the People TV. And of course on social media handles, it's at VOP TV Live. Good afternoon and thank you for being with us.